right, guys, so we're gonna go ahead and get started with the practice. Make sure you follow along. Size-wise of brushes, that's gonna be depending on you. I am gonna use something that has more of an effect with more of a pointed brush, not so much a flat brush. I know we had used the ones that are more squared in the last painting, but we're gonna stick to this style, okay? Now, as far as what size, depending on you. You know, if you want more of a larger brush stroke, then you'd be using, of course, the larger one. I've got the medium one here and even the small one. I even think, if I'm not mistaken, I think, yeah, this one's a little bit smaller. So I think I'm gonna be sticking to this one. This is a size 8. You can see they usually have the actual numbers on the sides. So if you're going by numbers, mine, I'm gonna be using an 8, okay? So what you wanna do for the practice, so this is a brand new brush. You don't ever really want to touch it too much, guys, because these do have chemicals on them to help protect them. So the best bet, if it's a brand new brush, usually it's going to be a little bit stiff. Like if I do this, you see how hard it is, it doesn't even move. I would have to push really hard down for you to see that, but I don't want to damage the brush. So if you have a brand new brush, what you want to do is wet it with water, and that way you can slowly tap it down until it starts to manipulate and it starts getting a little bit lighter with the touch. So it's gonna be soft, okay, rather than the hardness. Now you don't ever want to grab it with your hands because we have oils in our hands. So if you're mixing it with the chemical on this, it's gonna damage your brush faster, okay? So now that I kind of have it already, you know, it's pretty soft now. I'm gonna go ahead and start with the practice. Like I did tell you guys that the practice itself, you know, if you do different colors than mine, it's okay. So what I'm gonna end up doing for this one is we're gonna, and I'm gonna practice with water lilies on this, just because some of you guys might decide to do that at the end, and I want there to be some type of example for that. But really what we're gonna do is, so I'll do some water lilies over here, but what I'm gonna do is on the practice, so for those of you guys that know you're not gonna wanna do that, you might just wanna practice the brush strokes when I show you up here up on top, okay? So at this time, I'm gonna start off with the blue. I don't want just blue by itself. I do wanna start mixing some of the tones, and you guys should start getting a little bit more comfortable with mixing paint so it's not just right out of the actual can, you know, from that. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get this one now because I'm going into a whole different color and I do not want to mix my colors just yet. Like I'll just put some on the side. I'm grabbing a separate brush just to be able to grab a little bit of white and just place it down next to it to be able to do some of my mixing. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and just put this brush into my water just to make sure that it doesn't dry out on me. And then from here, this is where I can start with some of the mixing. So I'm gonna get some different blues in here, which I can get some white. And I'm just gonna start applying some brush stroke patterns. Now I don't want them to all be the same. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna apply, and again, this right now, we're just working with movement because that's the basic thing. So I'm just gonna go and I'm gonna apply a little bit of that color. I'm gonna grab some more white only, and then I'll apply in between that so I can still see my brush strokes and just getting some movement. Now I want some dark, so I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna put a little bit of dark as well. And so I'm just gonna continue with getting some of the brush strokes, but in a movement. I'm not doing what I did last time because what we were doing with the last one, notice that I'm kind of doing off to the side. The last one that we were working with, and I'll just do it a little bit right here, we were just going like that with dabs, almost kind of like a pointillism technique. And that's not what we're going for on this one. Usually with Impressionism, like I said, there's movement. So in order to get that feeling of movement, you want to go in the direction that you want that movement to be applied to the canvas. So I'm just going to go and I'm just getting a little bit of white, getting a little bit of blue, and it doesn't all have to match. That's fine because I want them to be a little bit different tones. So maybe I want some more dark in here. So I'm just going back and forth. If I do need more blue in this, it's better to get another brush. Okay, now if you know that, nah, you know what, I can just take it off from the side and I'll work my way, this way, that's fine. But just be aware that you could dirty the actual blue. So if you don't want to do that, then it's better just to get some with another brush and apply on those directions, okay? Like put it wherever you're mixing the paint. So I put some more darks. I know I need some more whites, so I'm gonna grab my white and I'm gonna come in and I'm just gonna work on direction. So I wanna make sure that I pull away in the direction that I want that movement to happen. Now, if I'm just practicing this just to practice this, like I'm not dealing with the water lilies just yet, then what you want to practice also is getting a different variety of look in somewhere else. So if I know that I'm going in this direction over here, then my practice down on the bottom over here, I want to go in the opposite direction. You can practice with different colors. You can practice with the same colors. Maybe I might want to get some of this yellow and just kind of mix it over here to kind of get some greens, you know, so that way as I'm mixing the blue in it, it'll start getting more of a green tone, you know, even though, like I said, with the water lilies, when you're doing the brush strokes, the ones that are up and down are usually going to be the water, and then this would be like the lilies. So technically I wouldn't be using the blues here. I'd probably be using it more with the green, which I will do down here on the bottom. I'm just showing you guys right now the different brush strokes that you can apply. Now, if your movement is going to start changing, because depending on what you are painting, those of you guys that are not going to follow along with me step by step on the final, and you're going to do something to where maybe it has some type of effect here, sometimes they're not going to all go in the same direction. When I showed you guys some of those examples earlier on the water, all of them were going up and down. But what if you're not doing water? What if it's like something where it's his shirt and it's going into a different direction? You might want to start bringing some of these like in a curved motion. So it's all about direction when it comes to Impressionism, okay? You don't want to stick to the same color either. I just put my brush into the white right now to be able to apply other colors. So don't just stick to one color. It's all about varieties of colors and making sure that you make it even. That's the thing, is you want to make sure that things feel evenly placed. So if this is a shirt, for example, like if this was Vincent van Gogh's shirt, I want to make sure that if I'm applying color here of this nature, I do also need to apply it down on the bottom part of his shirt. So I want to make sure that as I'm working with the colors, because you don't know as far as like the mixing over here, you can mix it and then for tomorrow, let's say, oh, I don't even remember what color I was using or how much of a color I put in there. This is why as you guys are working on your paintings, it's good to apply color here. And if I know that same color is going to be down here, apply it while you have it. Okay, that's the biggest as far as advice that I could give you guys when it comes to this style of painting, is make sure that as you're applying, that you apply it evenly, so that way it looks symmetrical and it has a balance at the very end of the actual piece itself. Okay, if you look at Starry Night and you look at his painting, I mean, that painting was done within a course of time. And when you look at the painting itself, you can tell that some of the same colors are being used throughout. Now, there are some artists that have enough practice to where, yes, they can mix the same. And when they paint the following day, they know how much they're applying. But not everybody has that particular skill at this point in the painting class. You know, you guys are barely starting off. Some of you guys, it might be, even though it's a part 3 class, it could be your first painting class. Sometimes the counselors will put you in, even though you haven't taken a part 2 yet, okay? So in saying that, just make sure that you guys make it evenly. So I'm gonna go ahead at this time, I'm gonna start applying the texture down here, down on the bottom. This is gonna be my practice down here on the bottom for the water lilies. So for those of you guys that are interested in doing something like that, you can. So right off the bat, I told you guys that when it comes to water, you know, with especially in the Impressionism, a lot of the artists will do the up and down motion, not side to side, which most people would think when they're painting water. So at this time, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start getting my blues, because this is the color that I'm going to be using mostly for the water. Will I apply some of the yellows and so forth? Yes, because there's reflection in the water. So even though my water lilies are going to be what's green, I should still have a little bit of green within the water itself, okay? So I'm only gonna work on, and I'm gonna repaint over this. So I'm only gonna work on this section of my paper. So I'm just gonna put a line just so you guys know where I'm gonna be working on mine. You guys don't have to do this, you can just paint and you're fine. So this is just a practice, remember. I'm only doing this just as a guide for you guys to know how much and what size I'm working at, okay? And if I put my fingers up to it, you can kind of see. So it's not very big, all right? So at this time, what I'm gonna end up doing is I'm gonna first work on the movement for the water itself, which is gonna be up and down. So I'm just gonna, this is gonna be random. I'm not following anything. All I'm doing is just putting, I know I want water here. So I'm gonna get some of my whites and I'm gonna go back and forth with those colors as well. So I'm just gonna go ahead and you can work on the same structure as I'm working. If you feel comfortable with that, you just wanna copy what I'm doing, that's fine. Be careful with getting big dabs like that. I know my space is a little bit smaller when we start working with larger paper, you know, it's going to be a little bit easier to control. But I'm just going to go ahead and grab some of the blue and just start placing it down where I know I'm not going to want the water lilies. So I'm just getting brush stroke up and down. I'm going to get some of the whites. I do have some yellows in there, and that's fine because I'm going to get that color anyways. So I'm just going to start putting more of this. I do need more white, so I'm going to grab from the side and not in the middle because then I contaminate all of the paint. Get some light blues in here. Don't lose all of the dark blue too. So when you're doing the texture for the practice, you don't want to lose all of those tones. I'm going to come a little bit in here. Maybe this part can touch as far as the water, because this is going to be where I put the lilies, and I'm going to put another group of lilies over here. Get some more of the dark blue so I can put just a few more strokes where they got lost here. Now, as I move to the top, because most of this is going to be water, I'm going to have water lilies right here. I'm going to have another grouping right here. I'll probably have one small one right here. So I will extend my water down this way, just because I know for my grouping, I do want to have it like this. And then I'm going to make sure that the top is going to change a little bit. So I'm going to have a grouping here. I'll probably have a small grouping here. So I know all of this is going to be water. So I'm just going to extend this up. And then this is what a lot of artists will do. They'll have the up and down texture when it comes to close to the water lilies. But as they move up, they tend to start changing because of they just want like a different look on the top. It's not going to be water lilies, but they are going to start changing as far as the direction. So I'm just going to start taking brush strokes. I am going to pick up some of the white because I don't want to lose that. And I know I'm working fast, guys, but again, this is just for the practice. So if you guys end up getting lost as you're doing your practice, you can always go back, watch the video again and follow along if you have to, and slow it down, okay? So I'm just gonna start creating brush strokes to the top. I'm gonna get some more blue because I lost the blue here. I wanna make sure that I see the strokes. And then I'm gonna just start really going, like if you pay attention to my brush, I'm kind of doing like circles, okay? I'm just gonna start getting these little forms, because I want it to be more of an impressionistic style. I don't want it to be completely solid of color, and I want movement. So I'm just going to try to create movement in the top half, because the top half is all water. I don't want it to be all up and down. Now, can you? Yes, if you want all of it being up and down, that's great. But because I want the contrast between the water here that's hitting with the water lilies versus the top, this is why I'm applying that texture. Okay, so I'm going to go back with a little bit of white. I'm going to add some white highlight. I'm not really thinking about it. I'm just going and attacking it. And this, honestly, like doing something more like this, yes, it's more of an expressionistic because it's expression as I'm painting, but it still has the impressionistic qualities, which is why they consider it impressionism. And that's why a lot of people will confuse the two, okay? So now that I have that, I do want a little bit of yellow. Like I want more yellow in my color. I want more of that green. So I'm gonna go and just put a few strokes on the up and down, especially the parts that are here closer to where I know I'm gonna want my water lilies. So I'm gonna put a little bit like this, just to kind of get a different color in there. And just go back, remember it's acrylic. So if you're not happy, like this looks too blue to me, then go back with a couple of strokes on top with another color and just go back and forth until you're happy with those tones. And this is just a practice. So even if it doesn't come out, at least you're practicing the strokes, and by the time you guys are on the final, you should be able to feel more comfortable with those, okay? So I'm just gonna get a little bit of this color. Remember, we want balance. So I will put a few strokes up here, just a tiny bit, not too much. And now that I have my water, at least this is where I want my water to be, maybe add just a couple blue strokes over here, just because I don't see any blue, I see all yellow. Pick up a little bit more and just put a couple in between. I even think it needs a little bit more than that. So this is the time to do it. If you feel like, nope, I want to go back and add some more of this other color, then add it now. And now that I have that, I'm going to go ahead and start adding my actual water lilies, okay? So on the water lilies, now I have to change my direction. I've been going up and down with these. And so what I want to do is I want to make sure that I incorporate the style where it's a little bit more to the side. We're going horizontal now. We were going vertical before, now we're going to go horizontal. Now, be aware that the water lilies are going to be more on the green side. So I do need to make sure that I mix that first before I even get started. So I'm going to put yellow down over here. I'm going to pick up some more, place it down. I'm going to go ahead and clean my brush off first before I dip it into the blue so I don't get it completely contaminated. Picking up some of the blue, and then this is where I'll mix my green over here. So mix a green that you're going to be happy with. I do recommend that you get a varieties of greens. Don't just do one green. So like how I have the dark, this would be considered a dark green here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to remove as much as I can. Remember, you always want to salvage whatever paint you have on your brush before you wipe, because then it's just a waste of paint. Then I'm going to get a little bit of yellow and I'm just going to place it here off to the side. So that way I can make a variety of greens. I can make some lighter greens and so forth as I'm painting. Okay. So I have like maybe 2 or 3 greens just by looking at that, what I've got here. I'm going to clean my brush again. And then from there, now I'll start with the whole water lily effect. So at this point, now what I'm going to end up doing is I'm going to get some of the dark green first, just because I want to be able to work from the bottom up. And usually you want to go dark to light. So I'm just going to go and I'm just going to kind of lightly kind of make like these long elongated shapes that will represent the lilies. So I'm not concentrating on so much of the texture just yet. Right now, I'm just figuring out my placement of the lilies. Then after that, I can grab the lighter color and I'm just going to come in, and this is where I'll start applying the actual strokes. So I know I need a lot more yellow, so I'm going to go ahead and grab some yellow, apply. Now I should not see, and a lot of times it's background first. So I could have put blue already on there, but I prefer to do it like this just because I want to be able to have more control. So when I apply this color, then I can go back and I can pick up some of the blues, and then I can just kind of get closer to the lily itself. But you could have just done all water and then just put the lily on top. That's another, because it's acrylic. We're not dealing with oils. And most of these other artists painted with oil, which is why you do that first rather than back and forth. So I'm just going to concentrate on getting a little bit closer to these, putting just a few little strokes with the blue. Because I have that green there and the yellow, it should automatically kind of combine already with it, which will give you some of those colors that you might need in between. And then I'm going to go ahead and just continue with the green, going back and forth, putting a little bit more areas. Wherever I think needs dark, I'll just put, and we're just, remember, small brush strokes, and we're going horizontal when it comes to the water lilies. Get some more yellow for here because it needs more light. You guys remember, it's all about motion. So if you want to just kind of go with a couple of circles after you've already applied some of the texture, you can apply it. Like here, these two are too similar. So I can either put like a highlight on this one going in this direction or opposite on the other one. But we need some kind of separation between the two. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to apply the same kind of technique. But because I noticed that when I was coming over here, I do want some of that water on the background. I am going to go up and down a little bit first, just because I have that color. I'm going to do the same thing with the blue because I don't want it on that whole entire area, but I want like some lilies on the top and some lilies on the bottom. A little bit of white. And then I can go with my lilies on top of that. So I'm going to get the dark green, and then I'm going to go ahead and put a lily here, a lily here, and then a few right here on the bottom. And remember that I said that it's all about movement. So as you are doing these, make sure that you have the movement that you're wanting. Like, do I want it to have where my eye is going in this direction? Do I want it to go around? if that's the case, if I want my eye to move up because I'm looking at it, and I know I haven't done the bottom just yet, but I still look at it, I'm like, there's something missing. I actually want like maybe 2 small lilies over here in the background. This is the time to place where you think it looks balanced, and it will make your eye move around the whole entire thing, okay? So I'm gonna go ahead and just the same thing, get some of the yellow, some of the light green, and I'm just gonna apply texture. We're just putting some, and we're trying to keep it horizontal. You know, I have to put a little bit more yellow on this side just to kind of create like that little highlight effect. And because it's Impressionism, if it's not perfect, guys, like if you have some areas that, not necessarily not with paint, because yes, everything should have paint, but if you have some areas that are like, I can't even tell that's a lily pad, it's okay, because that's the whole point of Impressionism, is that you won't really see it in little sections, you see it as a whole. Once you see the whole thing together, that's what creates that whole impressionistic style, okay? So now what I'm gonna end up doing is, let me just wash my brush a little bit. So I'm putting it into the water just to kind of clean off some of the paints, because I'm gonna come back over here. For me, this would be too many lilies. I do want a little bit more separation down here on the bottom. So I'm gonna go back into the blue, and the same thing that I was doing for the water. I want more separation between these areas, this lily and this lily that I'm gonna be putting over here, and maybe even just a little bit on the top. And then I'm gonna go back into the same color. So I need a little bit of yellow. I need some white. And now that I have those, now I can go into the greens. Now I am already running out of green over here, so I'm gonna mix a little bit more. It was the same thing. All I'm doing is getting some of the blue, placing it down, clean my brush so I can get some of the yellow, place it down over here, and then mix. Now, because these lilies are different from these, if that blue, it should come out the same. But if it does come out different, it's not a big deal, because it's a brand new batch of lilies down here on the bottom. So I'm just gonna do that round shape where I wanna place them. I'm gonna put one right here. And I'm gonna get some of the yellow. And today we are going over the lilies more or less as far as to get textures and so forth. But on Wednesday, we're gonna go over something totally different when it comes to this particular style. So that way you guys can understand some of the other elements when it comes to texture, okay? So I'm just gonna come and put a little bit of blue on the spots that there's no paint, because we do need to have some kind of color in there. And then we're not finished just yet, because when they do the water lilies, especially with this particular style, what they also do, what I've noticed, is that they tend to do a lot of outlining to kind of, even though it's impressionistic and you don't necessarily see too much of the texture, they still want for you to be able to tell individually where they are. So if you wanted to also do a type of they call it like an outline, then what you would do is you would use the darkest of the colors, which would be blue. So I'm gonna go into the blue, and you can mix a little bit of yellow. Like if you want more of a green hint rather than a blue, it's fine. But at this point, what I'm gonna do is just make sure that it's a dark tone. And then all I'm gonna do is, of course, and in all honesty, I would probably wait till it's completely dry to do this last step, but because of the sake of, you know, the class and so forth, I'm gonna go ahead and just use the point to try to outline, even though the other parts are wet. But like I said, you should try to do this when it's completely dry, at least in those areas. So that way you can kind of get a little bit of an outline for the lilies. Not all of the entire, like you don't want to circle it all the way around. It's just on parts where you would notice like more of like a shadow effect. Sometimes they do the highlighted area just to kind of create the contrast, but I'm just gonna do a couple of them. I'm not even gonna do all of them. So I'm gonna probably do like maybe that there. Because for me, this, I can tell the difference between here, but it's the areas that look a little bit lost that you should try to apply this to. So like maybe some of this area. Do you have to do this? From what I've explained, what you know, Impressionism is, do you have to do this particular step? I want to see if you guys know the answer to that. And you can type it in the chat, that's fine. I just want to kind of get feedback from you guys. From what I've already said about Impressionism, do I have to do this step if it looks like they're lost with Impressionism? So like this one, how it's kind of lost and we can't really see other than the highlight, but how it gets lost with the variety in the back. Should I outline it? Does it have to be outlined, in other words? That's the question. Anybody want to answer that for me? Nobody wants to answer? Well, technically, no. If I'm answering it for you guys. So no, you don't have to, just because of what Impressionism is. Now, I want to go beyond that. And usually with water lilies, and that's why I incorporated the red, I'm going to add a couple of little flowers in here. So I'm going to get the red over here. And I did wipe, you didn't see me do it, but I did wipe my brush off before I grabbed the red. And I'm going to get a little bit of the white to make more of like a pinkish hue rather than red. And what I'm going to end up doing is just a couple of little lotus flowers, you know, so I'm just going to place it on top. And I'm just doing the brush stroke of the actual flower itself. So this one, I'm actually working like if it were the petals. So I'm just going to go in and just do 2 there. And then I can do another one, maybe like right here. So I'm just trying to balance it. You know, if I have a big one on top, maybe I'll do a smaller one down here. You know, I'm going to probably go back with a little bit of red. So I will maybe put one more right here just because there's white of the background, like the actual paper, and I'm trying to cover it. So that's why I'm applying it in that spot, okay? I'm gonna get a little bit of white as well. Make sure that I try to make my brush into a point. And I'll just put a couple of little highlights on some of them. Maybe just a couple here. And I'll probably get just a little bit of red just to kind of do a little bit of shadowing on some parts, like where it sits on the bottom of the lilies. So, you know, keep it very, very simple. We want to make sure that, like I said, you still see the actual brush stroke. Try to do different directions. So water, I kept it vertical versus the horizontal on the actual lilies themselves. The flowers, I just stuck to the actual petal shape. So I just went with what a lotus, you know, they tend to go up. So they've got the little points. And then I did change the variety of shape. Could you have kept all of it up and down for the water? Yes. You know, if you wanted to keep that direction, it's okay. I only did it just because most of the paintings that I used to study and so forth, when I would look at the stuff on when we were studying it in the art history classes and so forth, I noticed that usually the tops would start going into different formations. And you can even do practices with your brushes, guys. That's the whole point of this, is to practice. So on this top part, like if you guys have leftover paper because you kept it small with the practice, you can always just practice different brush strokes, like kind of go like round and circles and kind of just be very, what's the word? Kind of just loose with it, kind of get like these little brush strokes. So that way you get different varieties of strokes, as well as what we were doing in the last project, which is more of like a paint dab, but with a direction. So you just want to make sure that you go in direction. So practice as much as you guys can, you know, with the rest of the paper. If you didn't use the whole thing when you were doing the painting, you can even wait till it dries if you guys want to practice on the back of this. And what I'm going to want you guys to do is send me pictures on Remind of your practice, because that's how you're going to be getting the daily grades for today, and then as well as on Wednesday. Okay, you're you know, if you want to mix the colors too, like right now I have the blues and maybe I want to just put some reds, this is the time to do it, is practice with different colors so you can kind of get a variety and kind of see what, you know, things you can kind of come up with when it comes to the colors. You know, if you want to put some yellow with the red, with the blue, just so you get a variety of tones of what styles. So when you get to your final, when you guys do your final, you already kind of have an idea of where things are going to go and how, what colors that you put next to each other, you know, what will kind of like the effect, like what effect is it going to give you? So that way you know what you're going to do for the end. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and stop the video there because that's what I'm going to